Hey there, everyone, it's Alejandro, and welcome back for day 331 of me doing daily LeetCode challenge to reach 1 year's worth of green contributions here on GitHub. So today's runs for June 12th, 2025. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. Okie doke. Alright, today we get LeetCode easy. Hey, a nice continuation to yesterday's problem. 3423, maximum difference between adjacent elements in a circular array. I see the word maximum. This is an optimization problem, which means we can either resort to usually dynamic programming, greedy, or divide and conquer. Okay, given a circular array nums, find the maximum absolute difference between adjacent elements. In a circular array, the first and last elements are adjacent. Okay. Is the length of nums at least 1? Oh no, it's or at least 2. Nice. Okay. Well, here we can do res is equal to absolute value of nums of 0 minus nums of 1. For I, comma num in you can say res is equal to max. We'll say default is equal to this, or return max of minus nums of I minus 1. I, comma num in enumerate nums. This will be right? Yeah. Something like this. This needs to be a negative 1. Okay, that way we get it all in one line. And there we go. Accepted, submit. And there we go. Completion history 331 days. Consistency is key. See ya tomorrow. Okay, well that's the one-liner solution. Here we could probably just do this, right? Otherwise we can do res is equal to absolute value of num0 minus nums of 1, negative 1. For I, comma num in enumerate nums. Diff is equal to absolute value of num prev num oh, actually basically we can just, I realized I made a mistake. I don't even need a default here. Yeah, I can just get rid of the parentheses. Sweet. Yeah, okay, well I don't even need a, there we go. That's kind of epic. Sweet. Alright, nice little clean one-line solution for today's problem. Yeah, so if you submit a couple times, I guess you just get back to the 0 mess. Right, yeah, I was just gonna do like, you know, num minus prev num if num minus prev num is greater or equal to 0, otherwise the other way around instead of using the absolute value function. At the end of the day, it's just O1 stuff, so there we go. Okay, so nevertheless, as always, in all my videos, I do a quick recap if I use the real solid problems. For this one, it's rather straightforward, right? Find the maximum difference. Okay, basically, you're given a circular array nums, right? Circular just meaning that like the first and last elements are connected, right? So it just makes like an infinite circle. And you want to find, okay, out of every single pair of adjacent elements in nums, which one is it that when you take the absolute value, when you consider every single pair of adjacent elements, for each such pair of adjacent elements, take their difference, i.e. subtract one from the other, take the absolute value of that, and now out of all of those, return to me the one that is largest, right? The maximum such difference, right? So given a circular array nums, find the maximum absolute difference between any pair of adjacent elements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to go through every single number in nums. So for I, comma num and enumerate num, so grab the index of the number, I'm going to say, well, the current num is this current num, and the number that comes before it, right, will be nums at index I minus 1, right? So so this is the same thing as for I in range length of nums, right, doing nums of I minus nums of I minus 1, right? This works just the same. And I can submit this if anything. Right, so what I'm doing here is I'm taking the max out of the following. I'm going through every single index in nums, and for every single index, what I'm going to say is, okay, I'm going to grab the current number, so the number at index I. I'm going to grab the previous number, the number of index I minus 1. I'm going to take their difference, right? I'm going to subtract one from the other. It doesn't matter which order I do it because I'm going to wrap it around the abs function, which takes the absolute value of whatever the result is, right? So for every single index in nums, I'm going to take the current number, which is number at index I. I'm going to take the previous number, which is the one at index I minus 1, take their difference, absolute value it, and then I'm going to take the maximum once I do this for every single index in nums, right? Now you'll notice that since the array is circular, that means we need to consider the case when index 0 and the very last index. What's nice is that when I do I is equal to 0, you'll notice that here I'm doing nums of I is equal to 0, nums of I minus 1, 0 minus 1 will be -1, and if you don't know in Python, if you index -1 in an array, it gives you the last element. So conveniently here, I minus 1 will be -1, so it returns me the last element. So when I is equal to 0 at the very beginning, I'm actually considering, like, you know, the first element and the last element together, right? If I didn't want to do that, I'd have to go from 1 onwards, but since we have a circular array, and we do want to consider the first and last element, I do include index 0, right? But that's pretty much all that I do. I go through every single index. For each index, grab the current number and the previous number, including if I'm at index 0, which is the first number and the last number, because of the -1 trick. Take the difference of those two numbers, absolute value it, and then I'm going to take the max out of when I compute this value for every single index I inside of the range num, right? So I have a max around it, and that's pretty much it. As we can see, we have a nice and efficient solution. 0 mass beats 100%. And yeah, but otherwise, that's pretty much it for this video. If you did find it useful, enjoyable, and interesting to perform, I'd highly appreciate if you left a like or a comment. But otherwise, I'll catch you next one. So till then, ciao, ciao, my friend. Bye-bye.